Atelier Ryza is the latest game in the long-running Atelier series, spanning 21 flagship titles. Luckily, not all games are connected, so there isn't a need to invest time into all the previous games to get started. Because of this, it also serves as a good entry point without having to worry about missing out too much on the story. I've really enjoyed my time on my first Atelier game, Mana Khemia, and have always wanted to try more games from the series, but just never got around to it. But with the lack of new JRPG releases in May, I finally get some breathing room to sit down and leisurely start a new game. No better time to start Atelier Ryza than now. Having already played Mana Khemia, I already had an idea of what gameplay was going to be like. The crafting system Alchemy is the heart and soul of the Atelier games. It ended up giving me exactly what I was looking for and satisfied my craving for a deep synthesis system. To create items, various amounts of materials need to be used, which are displayed on a grid using multiple connected nodes. Some recipes can be generic, requiring things like fruit and minerals, while other recipes can require specific things like flour for making biscuits. Materials have an element associated with them, and the nodes will show which elements the materials need to have to unlock its bonus, as well as what elements are needed for unlocking the connected node. Materials also have a quality and trait that will affect the end result of a synthesis. Traits will give specific bonuses to the item, while quality will affect the overall stats of the item. Crafting will require some materials that have to be made, such as metals, while other materials are found in the wild. Collecting materials in the wild also requires using different tools that become available later in the story. And of course, these tools have to be crafted using alchemy too, which feeds into the rewarding gameplay loop. It reminds me a bit of Harvest Moon, another game I really enjoyed as a child, where I had to go out and get materials to take care of my farm. Everything about Atelier Ryza's gameplay just melts together so well. It continues to build on itself to create an intricate and interesting system. As a result, there was a lot to learn about alchemy, but I still had a lot of fun with it. It felt rewarding to experiment using different materials and seeing what I would get out of it. As someone who doesn't like to take the time to read tutorials in most games I play, I was learning alchemy through my mistakes. But it's very forgiving. I would even say it's encouraged, since crafting items will increase the alchemy level, which allows even more items to be used in the synthesis to make better gear. So the more things I craft, the better. There is also a way to rework already crafted items to make them stronger through a process called item rebuild. For higher tier items, it becomes very difficult to max out all the nodes in one shot, so it's required to use item rebuild to make an item the best it can be. Once I got the hang of crafting, I wanted to craft the best items I could. I made all my materials using the best loot I can find in order to make my gear even more sweet. I also considered all the traits that would transfer from the resources being used, since certain traits can only be transferred to certain items. I would spend a whole day just crafting because there's just so much to make and so many ways to do it. New item recipes can also be discovered from a recipe of an existing item, adding even more variety to an already rewarding crafting system. Alchemy is a system that really makes Atelier Ryza stand out for me, though it's also a lot of work. But the more work I put in, the more rewarding it feels when I craft the exact gear and items I want. There can be two of the same equipment but have completely different bonuses and stats. There aren't many games that I know of that allow this level of control over crafting items. All this comes in full swing during combat, where I can experience the power of my work firsthand. It feels great to completely destroy enemies or actually survive a boss encounter that would previously wreck me. Atelier Ryza's combat system is done pretty well and something I enjoyed a lot. It uses a mixture of turn-based and real-time concepts. Characters will have turns that are determined by their wait time. Different actions will cause different delays before their next turn. But even if it's a character's turn to act, other things will still be happening. Enemies will not wait and will attack even if a character is in the middle of an action. Likewise, if a character is just standing there during their turn, the combat still continues on with or without any action from the character. Also, unlike traditional turn-based combat where all character actions are controlled, Atelier Ryza only allows control of one character, but control can be switched between the rest of the party. The other allies will be controlled by the AI and act on their own when it's their turn. Certain actions cost AP to use, but there is also a tactical level that can be increased by using AP. Higher tactical levels provide additional advantages like having an extra normal attack or bonuses for abilities. At the highest tactical level, a character's special attack can be used, but at the cost of resetting the tactical level back to 1. Items also work a bit differently than in most games. Unlike your typical RPGs where any item in the inventory can be used, Atelier Ryza requires characters to equip the item in what is called a core. Each weapon will have a different number of core slots, so I had to think about which items to bring and for which characters. Item use also differs in that their limits are based on another resource called CC, and not by their quantity. Each item costs different amounts of CC to use, and CC can be refreshed by converting an item into CC, which just makes it unusable until you go back to town. What I really like about Atelier Ryza's combat system is how easy it is to learn, yet it has a ton of mechanics that really bring out its potential and make it fun because of how well they work together. Orders and quick actions are the two mechanics that really sells the combat for me. Action orders are when allies make action requests, and if done, the ally will perform a special attack. These requests can be using an attack with a certain element or asking for heals. Not all orders can be done with the normal skill set learned through the level ups though, so this was another thing I had to account for when thinking about what items to equip on characters. Quick actions is another mechanic that lets a character ignore their wait time and immediately act at the cost of AP. Using this during specific situations like when an enemy is charging up their attack or stunned will trigger extra orders where allies will make a request to use a skill, but this time they will assist with an even stronger attack. All these decision-making situations and mechanics combined with the fast-paced real-time combat come together to make the combat engaging. Bosses were especially fun to fight since everything I knew and my reaction time was being put to the test. They don't die in a few hits and they hurt a lot, so it was much more intense. The hardest difficulty, pre-New Game Plus, wasn't that challenging in general, but I still died a few times to some bosses if I wasn't careful with my actions or had outdated gear. It worked well to create a nice balance where I had to pay attention to all the mechanics the game offered without having to be too proficient. But Alchemy doesn't only play a role in creating better gear to make combat easier, it's also the main focus of the story, which is cool. The story centers around Ryza, who lives on a rural island where not much happens. She always wants to go on adventures and devises plans with her two childhood friends, Lent and Tao. One day she comes across an alchemist named Empel who introduces her to alchemy, and it becomes her new obsession. She uses the skill to help those around her, and through this, I can see her mature as a character throughout the game. She goes from being a kid who is only looking for adventure to someone who continues to hone her skills to make a difference in people's lives. Lent and Tao also grow in very much the same way, as they follow their dreams that lead them to a new purpose in life. Lent wants to explore a tower located in an area prohibited by the townsfolk to prove his worth, and Tao wants to learn how to read all the books in his family's library. The story was light and a nice change of pace after recently playing through games with more intense themes like Persona 5 Royal. Atelier Ryza's story is very simple, with a straightforward premise that kind of reminds me of a children's story. It's a feel-good kind of story with a few light plot twists, but it works. The most refreshing aspect about the story were the innocent characters. It's just a bunch of kids trying to have fun and go on adventures that ends up turning into a rite of passage story. I didn't have to worry about building up romantic relationships, and there wasn't the overused childhood friends turning into lovers trope that's in a lot of JRPGs. The focus was specifically on the characters' growth, the adventures they had together, and the people they met. In a genre packed full of ecchi tropes, having a game tell the story without the need to use them is a nice change once in a while. The side characters on the other hand weren't as great. In town, some characters will have requests for Ryza to do, given her newfound proficiency in alchemy. These made up some of the side quests found in the game, which consisted of mostly fetch quests with some extermination missions mixed in. Needless to say, doing these side quests got dull and repetitive pretty quickly. It's just talk to them and then give them the item. Their stories for needing these items are slightly interesting though. It fills the backstory of what life is like in a place where not much happens, and also lets me see into their way of thinking. But because of the repetitive nature of their requests, I had to balance it with regular story progression to not get burnt out too fast. The best side quest was probably finding a goat during your travels, because he steps on the paper you tried to feed him with, which gives you his hoof stamp, which I thought was pretty funny. Even with this slight drawback with the side characters, Atelier Ryza shaped up to be a really fun game to play. I came in expecting a great crafting system and it did not disappoint. The light story worked well and turned out to be exactly what I needed to recharge from the last few games I played. The graphics aren't the best, but the game still looks good. The characters were cute and I liked how Ryza always had a blush on her face. The environments were varied and designed in interesting ways where it not only looked different, but exploration felt different. There were levels with wide open fields, to narrow corridors in a castle ruin, to magical forests with fairies. Combined with the incredible music that matches the mood of my surroundings, exploring the different areas really did feel like an adventure. Everything worked together to deliver a gratifying experience. The Atelier series seems to be holding strong after all these years, and I'm definitely glad I chose Atelier Ryza as the re-entry point into the series.